They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everybody. I'm Lou Ruggieri. That's Jose Ortiz. And this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be listening. We appreciate you taking some time and spending it with us today. Hopefully you found us on one of our many options. We're on the iHeartRadio podcasting app. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Play. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Coming up in the second hour, we have a lot of NFL talks, some not breaking news, but news this week, some new news this week in the NFL. We're going to talk about what players are on the hottest seat in the 2020 season. We're going to touch on the NBA draft. But first, we have a litany of NBA playoff games to discuss. And, this is a once-a-week recording, so we're going to kind of keep it a little more broad because obviously things change from day to day. So we want to be as timely as possible and kind of give overviews. And there is no better game to start with, Jose, than the Mavericks Clippers. And all I have to say is Luka is for real.
Yeah, he's not only just a top 5 player, he might be the best player in the game right now. That's how good he is. If someone said he's the best player in the game right now, how could you really argue against it? Look what he's doing on the floor, the way he's just the numbers. If you look at some of the rebounding and assist numbers and points, like putting up 40 points, 16 assists, 19 rebounds. These aren't cheap triple doubles. This is not a 10, 11, and 12. This is monster triple doubles. Putting his team on his back with Porzingis out. There's really not a lot to say. He knocking down the game-winning shot. He's just incredible. It's unbelievable that it's only his second year, and you would imagine he's only going to keep getting better. The league everyone better watch out in the NBA. This kid is for real, like you said.
Yeah, I don't want to pat myself on the back too hard, but I did say early on that I think the Mavericks were sorely underrated against the Clippers because they're a dangerous team, and there was a couple takeaways I had from this series up to this point. Number one is obviously Luka Doncic is just as good as, if not better than advertised. He's just a monster, like you said. I mean, a 40-point triple double is a lot better than a 10-10 and 10 game. He also without Porzingis, it's kind of even more impressive because all the more focus is on him, and there are two guys on the Heat that. Heat, excuse me. I'll tell you why I said Heat in a second. The Mavericks that kind of stood out to me a bit, and those guys. That's first off, Tim Hardaway Jr. is Tim Hardaway Jr. and Seth Curry. Okay. And both of these guys have tremendous NBA DNA. Seth Curry, obviously the brother of Steph Curry, but Seth Curry's he's not quite as good a shooter as his brother is, but. He put up a respectable performance and a good supplementary performance. Tim Hardaway Jr., I think, people forget that his father, Tim Hardaway Sr., had the nastiest crossover until Allen Iverson came along and took his title. But he was on the Heat, and that's where I started thinking about the Heat. Mm-hmm. I even had his shoes growing up. I had the Air Bacons that were Tim Hardaway's shoes, and oh my God, they were the best. So those guys kind of stepped up in a big way, and you figure if Porzingis gets back, this team is dangerous.
And you forgot about Trey Burke as well. He's been playing pretty well this postseason. And even with to build on your point with Seth Curry, he's a better defender, I believe, than his brother. Like just as far as just an on-ball perimeter defender. So he doesn't necessarily bring you the offense that Steph brings you, but he does bring you an intense perimeter defense, and that's important when you're playing against a team where their main scoring output is on the perimeter. When you're talking about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, those are the top two options offensively. You need good perimeter defense. If I'm the Clippers, I'm pretty worried right now. This is a must-win in Game 5, and the Mavericks, they're free. It's like no one's expecting them to win. They have Porzingis. Yeah, they've already exceeded expectations. Porzingis is out for Game 5 already.
Yep.
And honestly, the one thing that really has stood out to me, the Clippers had a vaunted defense. Everyone talked about how good Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were defending the perimeter and how good the Clippers were defensively. I haven't seen it this postseason so far. It's only been 4 games, but they've been one of the worst teams defensively this postseason. So that's just something to watch because Luka's just been able to take the game over at any time he wants to. So we'll see what happens.
And I'm glad you brought up those guys because if you remember during the season, I mean, all we heard about was how Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were the two best two-way players in the game. And so far there's a couple issues I had with that last game where at the end of the game, not only did Kawhi Leonard, it felt like Kawhi Leonard took that what would have been the game-winning shot and missed. I think that hurt it could have built on his legacy after the Sixers win last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, missing that shot, I feel like Luka came in and just grabbed the torch from him as far as like the new superstar. I think Kawhi Leonard, that sort of put a little dimness on the sheen that we have kind of granted to Kawhi Leonard. But more than that, I don't know if maybe the Clippers defense is that bad or the Mavericks offense is really just that good because they were one of the highest scoring teams in the league this year. And not for nothing, the defensive strategy of Doc Rivers, I don't know if it was a miscommunication or what, but one of the biggest problems I had if I was on the Clippers is you have those two guys, the two best two-way players in the league in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and neither one of them is guarding Luka on the final play of the game. You have Reggie Jackson out there who is just, oh my God, I felt so bad for him because he had no chance. He had no chance.
I didn't even actually notice that. That's a great point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, if you're Kawhi Leonard, how did you even come off of him? Like you're the best. You're a former defensive player of the year, considered one of the best defensive players in the game. Yeah, how is it like that's your guy? That's the guy you don't leave his side.
I got him, and that's it.
Yep. And if he puts up a shot, it's going to be with your hand in his face, and he's going to have to just make it over you. You're right. They didn't really go with their best foot forward, but I wonder if that's part of just maybe that's something the Mavericks did. I don't know what play they drew. Maybe there was a screen or something that freed Luka up and then just kind of put him on an island one-on-one. Because that's the other thing. He's a dangerous passer too. It's not just that he can beat you with his shooting and his scoring, which he can do that as well. But if you double him, if you switch too early, he can find the open guy with a laser pinpoint pass, and he can beat you that way too. So perhaps it was just, hey, you're on him. I'm not going to switch right now. There's only 3 seconds left. Let's see how it goes.
And the last thing I'll say about this game is that honorable mention goes to Lou Williams, who just put up a clinic with 36 points. I mean, who saw that coming out of Lou Williams? If he didn't show up, I mean, the Clippers would have gotten trashed by the Mavericks. So
there's a reason he's a 3-time six-man player, 6th man of the year. He's unbelievable off the bench.
The most points, I think, off the bench in NBA history.
Absolutely.
I think
that's true. Yep.
And so he well done, Lou Williams. You're getting back some of the respect you lost when you decided to go on your wing adventure earlier this season. But yeah, so the other big Western Conference game that we saw, well, there was a couple other. I think the whole Western Conference, all of the series so far have been entertaining in their own way. But then obviously the next game would be Lakers Portland, and we saw the Portland take game 1, and then the Lakers come back and take game 2, and then just dominate. I mean, they on 8/24 Kobe Bryant Day, we saw a Kobe-like beatdown that actually could have been worse. If you watch that game, it looked like that the Lakers took their foot off the gas sort of halfway. When they were up by 29 points at halftime. It's like, okay, and the Damian Lillard getting hurt obviously just destroyed the Blazers' chances of even trying to mount a comeback.
I think the Portland Trail Blazers have a fatal flaw in their offensive scheme, and it's very similar to we'll talk about the Rockets later, but I think it's kind of similar, where they're living and dying by the three. When Damian Lillard's hot, when CJ McCollum's hot, when Carmelo Anthony's hot. They're knocking down threes all over the place. Everyone's celebrating it. It's all good. No one can stop them. What the Lakers did was they clogged the lane with JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, and Anthony Davis, and said, "We want you to keep shooting these off-balance, long 3-point shots because you're not coming in here. You're not coming inside the paint If you come inside the paint, you're getting turned away. And that's what you kept seeing happening. And then you're seeing guys throw up desperation heaves. Damian Lillard taking these long 37-foot three-pointers where there's no ball movement. It's not like he's stepping into the shot. He's just, same thing with CJ McCollum. I'm just going to dribble up and just shoot this pull-up three-pointer with a guy right in my face. When you knock the shot down, it's Dame time. But when you don't make the shot, which is probably more often than not, it's all of a sudden a long rebound, and now the Lakers are off to the races. We'll see what happens with the rest of this series. It looks like the Lakers have woken up and are going to put the Blazers to bed. But if I'm the Blazers, I'm looking at a new head coach next season. They're not living up to their potential. I know that we kind of fell in love with them in the bubble, but if you look at it from the context of what they were coming from last season, going to the Western Conference Finals, this year there's no Golden State Warriors. So and you do worse. You're the 8th seed and you're going to probably get eliminated in 5 games. I'm looking at a new head coach next year.
Yeah, I think the Blazers need to add a little bit of size because it's a bad matchup for them because of the 3 guys that you said. The 3 7-footers on the Lakers are just, there's nothing that the Blazers can do. Nurkic is just getting abused. I think he's the leading scorer for the Blazers that last game.
He's getting thrown around like crazy. You're right.
Yeah, and I think a couple things with the Lakers that I noticed were, number one, if I'm LeBron, I'm feeling pretty good about my team because for the first time in what I would say is a long time, you saw all of the role players step up and play a role. No one went over and above and did anything crazy. Anthony Davis gave you 18 points in 18 minutes, but Danny Green showed up with 14 points. Even Kadavius Caldwell-Pope had 12 points. Dwight Howard chipped in 13 points. Kuzma had 18 points. You're just getting exactly what you need from them. And LeBron, was able to, obviously the game was over at halftime, but LeBron only had to play 28 minutes. And the other thing that kind of stood out was, I don't know if you noticed, but I think it was at the end of the first half where LeBron took, I think, a step over the logo and just launched a 3 and knocked down a 3-pointer and kind of gave the camera a little look. And that was a clear and direct shot at Damian Lillard because up until that shot, what were we talking about? We're talking about, I forget what the Dame throwing.
Dame time.
No, not even Dame time, but there was like a Damian logo or something. It was some logo Lillard or something like that.
Oh, okay.
There was something going around. And LeBron obviously took issue with that and just said, okay, anything you can do, I can do better. And just, it feels like LeBron is sort of rounding into that killer instinct that we've wanted to see him have for so long. It feels like he's being, he's all those years of being hardened by the Eastern Conference. I feel like it's starting to pay off, and he's starting to say, you know what? Nah, this is my time.
The last thing I want to say about the Lakers, and then we can just move on.
Yep.
I was just impressed with their system. I think you really hit on hit it on the head with the role players playing a role. They're just moving the ball so well. Their offense is so easy at times, and that's what I'm really impressed with. You're not seeing guys take these ridiculous 3-pointers, off balance shots. They're moving the ball around the paint. They move the ball around the 3-point line. Guys are cutting in. They're getting into the lane. Guys are posting up, and the ball's not staying in one person's hand, and it just makes it so the defense has to keep rotating, and eventually you're going to be late on your rotation, and the guy's going to get an open shot, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, and that's it. Just pass the ball. And you start to wonder, like, Avery Bradley and Rondo. If Rondo was on this team, my God, think of how much more passing there'd be. So, they're playing at a slight disadvantage. Obviously, well, the Blazers are too, with CJ McCollum with a broken bone in his back, and now Damian Lillard, who knows? First it was his finger, now I think it's his ankle or something. It looks like that series might be a little a little more prematurely than we expected. But another big game. All the Western Conference games have just been unbelievable, and heaven help his soul. I think the Donovan Mitchell is probably the sickest man in America because he picked the worst day to drop 50 points in a game because not only was he overshadowed by Luka's game-winning 43-point triple-double, he also got almost matched point for point by the Nuggets' Jamal Murray, who also had 50 points. So Donovan Mitchell I think the stat was floating around, and it's worth repeating. Donovan Mitchell became the third player in history to have multiple 50-point games in the same series, up there with only Allen Iverson and Michael Jordan. That's some pretty rarefied air to be put in context with. And this game, it's just Donovan Mitchell's the man. I don't even know what to say about him. He's unbelievable.
He's been ridiculously impressive. Just to let you know, he's missed so far in the postseason. He's missed 2 free throws. That's just incredible. I've actually been. That's the one series where I feel like I'm just not 100. Like I expected the Nuggets to be better, and they're just. I know they won tonight, and then they're still alive, but the Jazz have just been clearly the better team. They've been shooting at a higher clip from the field. They've been going to the free throw line more often. They've been winning the battle of the boards. And then Donovan Mitchell has been spectacular. Yeah. And then I think Rudy Gobert played. That's maybe something that we're not noticing. He's played well as an interior defender, which he is the reigning 2-time defending defensive player of the year. So it stands to reason. But I've been very impressed with the Utah Jazz. They're much better than I realized. And the Nuggets, they're another team that I think they're going to have to do some soul searching this off season about where they're going from here, because I'm not sure. Maybe they've already hit their ceiling. I don't know.
Yeah, Mike Conley Jr. for the Jazz showed up big time as a second scoring option to Donovan Mitchell. Gobert, like you mentioned, is just he only throws up 17 points in that last game, but he was still a defensive nightmare. And the Nuggets, I don't know what to say about the Nuggets. I mean, Jokic is phenomenal. He's an unbelievable center. He's like a point center. I don't even know what to call him. And, Michael Porter Jr. we had some whisperings about him maybe living up to expectations, but he has not done so recently. And I don't even know if I'm the Nuggets GM, like what do I need to add? I feel like they just need to add better shooters. I mean, Jamal Murray's there, but I don't know.
I don't know. The one question that's really been coming to me about this is, and we can debate this on another time maybe, but can you still win in the NBA when your best player is your center? Like, can you win? It seems like you have to have your best player be a perimeter threat. I just don't know if it's possible to win in the NBA anymore. With Jokic is a great player, but he's a center, and it just seems like his ceiling, his upside is a little limited. Where you see Murray can go for 50 points and all these other players, I don't know. It just started to make me wonder about the value of having the best center, having your best player be at the center.
I mean, I think the only there's 2 examples that come to mind with that is that the Lakers need Anthony Davis to be the best player in that series. Obviously, career-wise, LeBron is by far and away the best player, but Anthony Davis needs to be the best player on that team night in, night out for the Lakers to even have a chance.
So do you think Anthony Davis has been the best player so far in that series? Because I think LeBron's been better than Anthony Davis so far.
I think LeBron's been better. I don't know if that's going to last. I think LeBron needs Anthony Davis to be at least as good as he is.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then the other team that we'll talk about a little later is the 76ers. Yeah. And, Joel Embiid being the best player on that team. And even the Milwaukee Bucks, I don't know.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Eastern Conference in a little bit. But there's one more game we have to touch on in the Western Conference before we take a break. Houston Rockets and the, for me, shocking Oklahoma City Thunder. I am shocked that this series is tied up. I thought that the Rockets were going to just blow through. I didn't even think that the Thunder belonged as a playoff team, honestly. And I have to admit, Chris Paul proved me wrong. I threw some dirt on him way too early, and he just has that grit and guile to impose his will on this Rockets team, who is absent Russell Westbrook. So that is a huge loss. But
yeah,
I'm shocked that the series is tied up.
Well, after OKC went down 2-0, I have to admit that I was starting to question my read of the series. But when I was looking at the series in the beginning, I was like, okay, the Rockets have a better roster, but I just feel like Oklahoma City is just a better team. And I think what I was trying to figure it out, I'm looking at it, Oklahoma City just does kind of the dirty things. They're not as talented. And so, the Rockets look flashy when they're not the same, kind of similar to the Portland Trailblazers. When they're knocking down the three-pointers, when they're hitting open jump shots, everything is great.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma City keeps attacking the basket, and that's the problem. The Rockets are settling for jump shots too often. This series, the Rockets have shot 70 free throws. Oklahoma City has shot 106 free throws. It's like it's not even close. They're also out rebounding them. This is how lesser teams hang with better teams, by getting to the free throw line and winning the battle at the boards. I don't know what's going to happen in Game 5, but at this point, I'm starting to question, and I've been questioning, Mike D'Antoni is not really a championship coach. We've seen this proven over and over and over again. And Oklahoma City is playing fundamentally sound basketball, and I just feel like the Rockets are playing. They're just sitting around watching the James Harden show, which has been on reruns for the last 5 years. So I just don't know what to expect at this point, other than the Rockets losing again.
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway I had from this game, aside from Chris Paul being better than, not quite as over the hill as I thought, was James Harden. I have said this before, and I'll say it again. I think James Harden is severely overrated. I think he takes advantage of rules, and I think he uses kind of dirty pool to get his way. And just watching that game, and most of these games, it looks like half the time that he has the ball, all he's trying to do is just get to the free throw line. It doesn't look like he has he'll start driving down the lane, and it looks like he runs out of whatever idea. Like, he only had half an idea, and that's that he just expects to be fouled, so he doesn't think about how to complete his process down the lane, and he just throws up this garbage, and then cries about it, and kind of just throws his hands up, and why am I not being fouled? What the, And it's I'm actually, I have secondhand embarrassment, because I'm like, dude, you should be the best player in this bubble. You should just be crushing. Without Russell Westbrook, you should just be taking over and hitting shot after shot after shot. And instead of whining about not getting to the free throw line, how about you just take a good shot and make a shot instead of jumping into a guy or falling down every time you take a shot? Stop trying to get to the free throw line, and it'll happen. But it doesn't need to be how you make most of your points. It's just it's infuriating.
It's infuriating. It's tough to watch. And just to finish off your point about Harden, he's a volume scorer. That's it. He shoots 44% from the field if we're lucky. He's a volume scorer, and we've seen in the last decade, volume scorers don't go very far in the playoffs. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't know what to. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. It's just.
What is your expectation for the rest of this series? If you do you still expect Houston to hold on and win?
I think Houston's going to pull it out. I think it's going to be a tougher series than I thought. I don't think. I guess after this, Houston would play. Who would Houston play after this if they won?
Houston play the Lakers. The Lakers.
Okay.
Or if assuming they win, Lakers or Portland. I guess we should be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but for all intents and purposes,
yeah, the Lakers. Yeah,
the Lakers. Yeah. I don't think that Houston has much of a prayer against the Lakers. I think this is sort of their swan song. And honestly, if they bow out in this first round, I think Mike D'Antoni's done in Houston.
He's done in Houston if they don't win a championship, I don't think. I just don't see how you keep bringing him back to keep falling short of the prize. He hasn't proven that he can win.
If they make the finals, you think they'll...
Okay, well, yeah, that's true. If they make the finals, you're right. It's finals or bust. That's fair. Yeah, it's finals or bust.
Yes, we agree with that.
Yep.
All right, so let's take a quick break. We're going to touch on all the Eastern Conference pros and cons and what happened in all those games, and a lot more brooms being thrown around in the Eastern Conference. A lot of sweeping action. So we'll talk about that and more on the Benchwarmerz podcast. So stick around.
If you're sick with COVID-19 or think you might have it, take steps to help protect other people from getting sick. Stay home except to get medical care. Call the doctor before visiting. Separate yourself from others who live with you. Wear a cloth face covering to protect others. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue and clean your hands right away. Avoid sharing items with other people in your home. This includes things like towels and bedding. Be sure dishes are washed in hot water or the dishwasher before anyone else uses them. Stay aware of how you feel. If you start to have difficulty breathing or if you're worried about your health, call your doctor. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I'm Lou Ruggieri, that's Jose Ortiz, and this is still the Benchwarmers podcast. We appreciate you taking some time to spend it with us. You can follow us along iHeartRadio podcasting app, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Apple, Google, all the usual suspects when it comes to podcasting. If you're listening to us, odds are you've figured out how to find us by now. Big first segment touched on all the NBA Western Conference playoff games. Lot of exciting news and things going on there. A little less exciting and a little more, like I mentioned before the break, a few more brooms being thrown around the Eastern Conference. We've had, 3 sweeps in the Eastern Conference? I mean, it's sort of embarrassing, and it kind of just shows that, the Eastern Conference is pretty top-heavy when it comes to talent. And the first sweep I'd like to discuss is the Miami Heat just beating the pants off the Pacers. And this marks, there's a couple takeaways from this game. This marks the 5th first-round exit the Pacers have had in a row. And that is just embarrassing. I mean, that hurts. It's like you're good enough to get there. You're not good enough to do anything once you're there. And the team, I don't know. I think that the Pacers are just not great. I mean, they had the Michael Jordan of the bubble, T.J. Warren, and now he's done. But I think more importantly, I think what this series says about the Heat is that the Heat are way better, and they're flying incredibly under the radar. And they have just a team that is dangerous from top to bottom.
Yeah, I would be extremely worried if I was the Bucks. I know you still have to get past Orlando, which that's
they'll get past Orlando.
Just to quickly touch what you said, Indiana. This is what happens to teams that don't have stars, right? You have a good team so you can get to the playoffs. When you don't have a top 10 type transcendent player, you get eliminated in the first round. It is what it is. That's the league that we're in. Miami plays great team ball. They really spread the floor around, and they knock down 3-pointers. And you look at Jimmy Butler. I have to give you credit. You were really singing his praises weeks ago before the postseason started. I didn't think he was a bad player, but I've been thoroughly impressed with him this postseason. He plays within himself. He doesn't take bad shots. He doesn't take plays off defensively. He brings a level of intensity to the team that I don't think it's easy to quantify statistically. He's just a great player. They have a good supporting cast with Goran Dragic, who averaged over 23 or nearly 23 a game this postseason so far. Bam Adebayo has been a force on the inside, and they have knockdown shooters all around. So from the 3-point line, Tyler Hero. What a great name, by the way, for sports. Yes. I just want to throw that out there.
Tyler Hero is not afraid, man. He is just fearless and will throw up a shot no matter how many he's missed.
Oh, but yeah. Just looking ahead, obviously we expect Orlando to lose to Milwaukee, but Miami has 4 players who are shooting over 40% from 3-point range in this postseason. That's a scary proposition for any team to face. If you're the Bucks, you better hope that they're not as hot as they've been so far.
Yeah, I think the Bucks are in trouble with the Heat, and the Bucks should be careful because I think the patience level with Giannis now being he'll probably be a 2-time MVP after it's all done. But this could be another upset. I mean, I know the Raptors kind of upset them last year and obviously went on to win the title. I don't think that's going to happen with the Heat, but I think the Heat could upset the Bucks and then move on because they play so well as a team, and I think Eric Spoelstra should be given incredible. And also Pat Riley for assembling yet another great team from top to bottom. Yep. Yeah, Jimmy Butler I thought was the best of the bunch in that Sixers lineup last year, and they jettisoned him and paid Tobias Harris and Al
Horford. Oh my gosh,
Al Horford. So let's jump to that game really quick. So the other series, the Celtics swept the 76ers, and now I have a lot to say about this game.
Okay.
First off, I thought that maybe Brett Brown would keep his job because they had a built-in excuse with Ben Simmons getting injured for the series, and that was not the case. They after 7 years, Brett Brown is out, And the Sixers I don't know what to say. The Al Horford thing that you talked about, Al Horford, I don't think if there was one position that the Sixers did not need, it was another big man who doesn't really shoot much.
I don't know what it is about Al Horford. Maybe I don't know. It just seems like he just can get paid, and people just seek his services like he's this amazing player. He's like the Sam Bradford of the NFL. Of the NBA. I don't know how he keeps getting all this money. I look at his numbers. I'm never really impressed. Like, I'm not saying they're bad, but they're not like over the top yet. I think he's due $27 million next season. Yeah. It's like, this is what, like, that's why the process isn't working. I mean, and I think we can say it didn't work with the firing of Brett Brown, right? When you fire him, you've just announced that the process didn't work. So, we've seen Elton Brand come out, the GM Elton Brand has come out and said that they're not going to get rid of Ben Simmons, they're not going to get rid of Joel Embiid. So what I want to know is, what are you doing with Tobias Harris and Al Horford? Who is trading for them? Who is trading for those players?
Yeah, and the Sixers, there's a lot of issues with the Sixers, and I do think you should keep Simmons and Embiid, and I think they just need a stronger leadership, because it felt like watching that game, I guess maybe after Ben Simmons, but even Ben Simmons didn't really seem like he was doing much either.
He's okay.
There was no sense of urgency on the court.
Yeah.
It just felt like they were kind of going through the motions, and no one really stepped up and said, hey, and this is where Joel Embiid, he has some maturity issues, and it shows. You have to step up and get in people's faces, and including your own teammates, and say, hey, let's go. Like, we need to win this.
Good. I was gonna say, it makes me, and that's when I brought up the question: can you win with a center as your best player?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need guys who can come out and knock down some, get their own shot. They don't have to get into the post and have the ball fed into them. You need a guy who can break down the defense, get into a spot, and knock down a jumper. And they just don't have that player right now on the team. It's not Tobias Harris, certainly not Al Horford. It's not Joel Embiid, and I think they thought it could be Ben Simmons, but it hasn't been him either. So I don't really know what they do. I think they have a flawed roster that's not, unless they can hit big in the draft and get some hidden gem. I think they're basically capped right now. I don't know what they can do.
Yeah, Al Horford to me is probably sort of the Frank Gore of the NBA. I feel like he's consistent. He's consistently slightly above average. He's done it for a long time. This is 10 years in the league. I'm not trying to besmirch the good name of Frank Gore, but I think that it's, he's not good enough to be an amazing player. He's just not a highlight guy. I mean, how many highlight runs have you seen Frank Gore have? Maybe 5 in his 15, 18, whatever it is years. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Al Horford's a 5-time All-Star. He was all defensive player. I mean, he's been good. He's just not great. But the bigger issue, I think, with the Sixers, and this is sort of my question for you, is I think that this is a testament to the idea that obviously the process after being processed is not worked. But I don't think it's so much as the talent, but I think that mentality, when you intentionally are losing as a professional organization, I think that when you start letting people think that it's okay to lose, that effect on a team's psyche is immeasurable. I think that just destroys your aura. It destroys your team confidence, and you just sort of it's a hard culture to break out of. And I think that I'm hoping that this is sort of a cautionary tale for anybody else that's thinking of kind of going down that road and tanking intentionally. It's just, even if you get the players, they're going to come into an organization that has been just intentionally losing for at least a season. And outside of the Spurs with Tim Duncan and David Robinson, I don't think that this has ever worked in the history of the NBA.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. That's a great point. They built a losing culture. You can't build a losing culture for 5 to 7 years and then try and turn. Oh, now we have 2 good players. Light switch on. Let's start winning. It doesn't work that way. But yeah, a lot of times. I mean, you think about most of the players who won championships. it does take some knocking on the door and kind of, fighting and fighting and fighting. And if you come into an organization that hasn't had any fight in it for years, what can you really expect? It's a great point.
And then finally, the last sweep we saw, the last sweep was the Raptors embarrassing the Nets, and the Raptors might be the best team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, they just talk about the polar opposite of the team we were just talking about, the 76ers. The Raptors just look like they have a fight in them, and they're not a great team. I mean, they have some star players. Siakam obviously is going to be a superstar. Van Vliet looks like he's coming into his own after kind of perking up last year. And even being Kawhi-less, Nick Nurse won Coach of the Year, and it's so they have the coaching, and they have people just seem to know their roles.
Well, it's almost like you said, the opposite of the Sixers, right? The Sixers had a losing culture, right?
Right.
How many years were the Raptors knocking on the door, even before this, where they had DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, and they couldn't get past the Miami Heat, and all the different iterations of the Heat? They kept on going. They kept on trying to build that winning culture, and now you have a team that's confident. They don't feel like they're not surprised. They don't feel like they're doing anything out of the ordinary. This is a first round series. They beat the Nets by an average of 21 points a game. This was nothing to them. They're like, we have our eyes on the prize, and they believe that they can win, and they actually know that they can win because they've already won. And you're right, Nick. Without Kawhi Leonard, you would think that they would have lost a step or two, but it just seems like Pascal Siakam has stepped up. All the other players have stepped up, and I'm going to tell you, I'm already picking the Raptors to beat the Celtics in 6.
Wow.
Just because I just think it's a match. It's a mismatch. I don't know who on Boston is going to guard Pascal Siakam. No one on their team to me can guard Pascal Siakam. And on the other hand, you look at the Raptors guards, or front court, I should say. Fred Van Vliet, Kyle Lowry, Norman Powell. Those are all good perimeter defenders. They can hang and at least make life difficult for Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. So
yep.
I got the Raptors going, winning this one. And
I think this is going to be a great series. I kind of leaning towards the Celtics.
Okay.
And I think, I'm not sure who is going to guard. I mean, they're going to be missing Gordon Hayward pretty severely.
Yeah.
Because Siakam is the problem. I mean, but I think that the Celtics have a pretty stout offense, and it looks like Jason Tatum is going to be, between Jason Tatum and Kemba Walker, I mean, they're just going to be superstars. Jaylen Brown, too, obviously, is up and coming. But as far as the Raptors, I mean, what can you say? I mean, they just crushed the Nets. And the Nets,
they're also one of the best defensive teams in the league this postseason. They have not missed a beat. They've just been great. So
yeah, Marcus Saul, former Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he's pretty good. And the Nets, I have to at least give the Nets credit. I mean, they showed some fight, and honestly, I saw more fight out of the Nets than I did out of the Sixers.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
It does beg the question. I mean, once Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving come back, I mean, this series would have been a lot different. I don't know if the end result would have been different, but I think this series would have went a lot further, obviously, with arguably one of the best players in the league, and then, two of the best players in the league, really.
Yeah.
I mean, Durant, it could be his top 5 when he's at his peak.
Absolutely.
And Kyrie has potential, we know Kyrie's potential, so, it's going to be good.
I was just say, the Nets will be good. They'll be better next year. I look at them as if I was ranking it right now, I'd probably put them as the number 4 seed behind the Bucks, assuming that Giannis stays with the Bucks and everyone stays pat. The Bucks, Raptors, and Celtics. I think that however you want to order those 3, I think that the Nets will come right after them.
And so the last series that you need to talk about is the Bucks putting the Magic in their place. And I think, this seems like a foregone conclusion. It's sort of, I think the Magic upsetting the Bucks in that first game was a good wake-up call and a good, recoverable stumble by the Bucks, and I think it kind of slapped them into shape where it was like, oh wait, okay, all right, we have to do this. And Giannis is Giannis. I mean, he's unbelievable. Giannis. The thing that worries me about the Bucks is sort of my concern that has been with the Lakers that kind of got answered in that last game, is that Giannis's supporting cast it's hit and miss. One day, I mean, literally, and it's one day they're there and they show up and they're a great team and they just blow out the team they're playing, and then the next game it's Brooke Lopez is nowhere to be found. Chris Middleton is pick up a white courtesy phone and show up to the game. It's hard to see that this team's being consistently good without that sort of performance.
Yeah, I completely agree. Giannis has been amazing, but his supporting cast, as you said, they've been okay. They haven't been great, and you kind of need that second guy, and oftentimes a third guy who you can rely on to put up 20 to 30 points in a pinch, or a high, 19 points in 18 minutes or something like that. And it just doesn't feel like they have that second guy. And it seems like if you just make life difficult for Giannis, and you can kind of live with what everyone else does, that they won't go very far. We'll see what happens. I haven't been overly impressed with the Bucks. That said, they're gonna put Orlando. Orlando's done. So
yeah, and I think a guy like Jimmy Butler or something on the Bucks would just change that entire. Like, they need another go-to big time player, and I think that as much as we all keep talking about Chris Middleton, I think his ceiling is being a very good third option, and not a solid second option. So,
yep,
I guess we'll see. Agree. So, all right, that'll do it for the first hour. Coming up next hour, we have a whole host of NFL news to talk about, and a big question about who's on the hot seat coming up in different positions. And then coming up next, we're going to touch on the NBA draft and everything that might bring about for next season. So stick around. We'll be right back on the Benchwarmers.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers Podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.